author of the best-selling book, The E-Myth, Michael E. Gerber.
What's missing in 99% of all companies? There is no dream.
I've actually considered campaigning Congress to make it illegal to start a business without reading your book.
An entrepreneur is four different guys. The dreamer has a dream, the thinker has a vision, the storyteller has a purpose, and the leader has a mission.
What's step one?
Absolutely coming face to face with the reality that I want that to happen.
It's time to go inside Quest with host Tom Bilyeu, president and co-founder of the second fastest growing private company in America. And now he's uncovering the universal principles of success.
I can tell you right now what principle number one is. Follow your passion.
Inside Quest starts right now.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Inside Quest. We are the Cape Canaveral for the intellectual astronauts, and with us on the launch pad today, pressing some buttons, is none other than the chief aggravator himself, the man that Inc. magazine called the #1 small business guru on the planet. He is a poet, he's a hippie, he's a beatnik, he's a saxophone player, and he created one of the most tactically interesting business incubators I've ever seen, The Dreaming Room. He is the author of the best-selling book, The E-Myth. He is none other than Michael E. Gerber. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you.
My delight.
Now, the reason that I was so excited to have you on the show, I read your book, which is, for me, a Quake book. The E-Myth Revisited is one of those books I really believe every entrepreneur has to read before they start a business. I've actually considered campaigning Congress to make it illegal to start a business without reading that first. I wish I had found it 15 years ago. You could have saved me a lot of pain and suffering instead of 6 months ago. But hopefully you can help everybody that's watching the show today the way that you've helped over 70,000 businesses worldwide learn from your teachings, which is an absolutely staggering number, and I think pretty officially makes you the Ray Kroc of small business development. And I know that Ray Kroc is something that you talk about a lot. What does he symbolize for you?
The most extraordinary thing about McDonald's is how consistent every store delivers exactly what it promises. He never made hamburgers, he never made French fries, he never made milkshakes. He went to work on the franchise to perfect the system. So the guy intuitively knew that if he was going to grow, and that's what he intended to do, he had to build a template, a prototype for that growth. And that's what he did. And when he got the template done, the prototype done, meaning the system worked in the hands of kids at minimum wage, he then could franchise it, license it. But the rigor, the discipline that he applied to their taking the license and implementing it in wherever they implemented it was astonishing. And so to me, McDonald's is the perfect exemplar for anybody starting a business. It isn't don't sell bad food. It's sell what you're going to sell, make certain that it has integrity, and make certain that you can do it with integrity as a system. So the system is sacrosanct. Absolutely.
It's interesting because so you talk a lot about systems, obviously, in your public speaking. Your book is all about systems, utterly fascinating. I think it'd be really great for these guys who haven't read the book to hear that you didn't get into business until you were in your 40s, until really, I wasn't joking, he really is a sax player, former hippie beatnik poet. And when you hear his story, which is told very eloquently in the book, because you think he's talking about somebody else, and then he reveals in the end, no, I'm talking about me. But you're like, wait a second, you're this world famous business guy. Like, how did you start as the framer? You framed houses. Some of your most profound lessons came at 12 from your saxophone teacher, and you're writing poetry for your wife. I mean, it was just like this disconnect. And then you've got the very famous story about sort of stumbling your way into being a business advisor. But do you think there are advantages that you've gained in being able to see business as a system by coming into the game so late?
All of the things that I had done up to that point in time, that I'd learned from my saxophone teacher, you don't make music, music finds you. Your job is to practice. And it's not just to practice anything for whatever time you allot to it, but to practice exactly what I tell you to practice in exactly the way I tell you to practice for exactly as long as I tell you to practice. So I learned that. I learned, memorize this script. Get it just like that. No, not that way, this way. And this is where the inflection is. And this is where you let off. And this is when you sit back. And this is when you sit forward. Then I learned it about framing a house. So they're all different. But the guys I learned from, they'd say, if you want to become one of the best saxophone players in the world, this is how you're going to do it. If you want to become one of the best framers in the world, these are the rules of the game.
Right.
No rules, no game. So I learned that. So all that
How did
preparation.
you get into that, though? That's so meta, right? And that's one of the things that going through your story. So I'm actually obsessed with something that sounds like you're like, whatever. But for me, it's like, oh my God, I have to understand this.
If there was anything that was absolutely core to it, it was practice. You must practice. Not anything, not everything, but something.
Right.
And that is, if there is any secret, that. But then the question becomes, what's the one thing you're going to practice? And the answer is whatever holds true meaning for you. And so it's got to have meaning, meaning there's got to be a reason you're practicing. I want to be one of the best saxophone players in the world. Whether you're going to become that or not is irrelevant.
In fact, you have a quote about that. It went something like this. In playing the saxophone specifically, practice is essentially about finding the meaning, but you can't find the meaning until you've put in the disciplined practice, until you've put in the work of learning how to play this thing. It's that meaning from the execution that I find so fascinating about your work. It's like calling it the dreaming room. I'm expecting it to be touchy-feely like The Secret, something where I should burn some incense, sit cross-legged, but it's not. And the most fascinating thing is, guys, do yourself a favor, type his name into YouTube, plus Dreaming Room, Michael E. Gerber Dreaming Room. You're gonna see him with a guy, forget his name, and this guy comes up to pitch his idea, which clearly he is deeply passionate about, and Michael, in this just total no bullshit way, walks him through why he is about to commit business suicide and how it's not gonna work and he hasn't thought through it enough. I mean, and it's fun and funny and the audience is laughing and the guy's laughing, but it was so true. And you took it from this sort of ethereal, I have a dream, to what are the tactics needed to execute on your dream, which I found utterly fascinating, and leads me to an important question. How do you use process to help people find meaning?
Well, process is simply the evolution from one benchmark to another. So step one, step two, step three, that's a process.
Sure.
It's a system over time. So if you can see the entire process from above, if you can rise above a process, you see a system. It's a moving creation. How we use process is to understand the components of dreaming, of entrepreneurship. And so in order for that to happen, I have to take entrepreneurship apart and to see it for what it really is.
Awesome. What is it?
Yeah. So entrepreneurship is 4 different qualities and 4 different personalities. An entrepreneur is 4 different guys. And it's the dreamer, the thinker, the storyteller, and the leader. And you combine those 4 and you have an entrepreneur. You subtract any one of them and you have somebody who's going to be struggling. It doesn't mean that the guy who, in fact, is a dreamer, a thinker, a storyteller, and a leader doesn't struggle. Walt Disney struggled, Steve Jobs struggled, everybody struggles.
Right.
Everybody struggles with what we don't know and what we're learning. But the dreamer has a dream, the thinker has a vision, the storyteller has a purpose, and the leader has a mission. Without the dream, the vision is truncated. Without the dream, the vision becomes an objective. Without the dream, the vision doesn't hold deep meaning. Until you understand that the vision is only real when it relates to a dream, Then you understand what's missing in 99% of all companies. There is no dream. But you understand there is no dream in the person who founded it. There's just an objective, an outcome he wants to get. It's something he wants to get as opposed to something he wants to create.
Right.
So the dreamer, the thinker, the storyteller, the leader. So now we see that as a process. So the thinker thinks through what the dreamer dreams through. And those two personalities are completely necessary, but insufficient on their own.
Right.
So you understand that's a process. And the evolution of that process goes from when you first start it, and then you improve upon it, and then so innovation, quantification, orchestration, we discovered was the business development process.
Right.
It's continuous. That's a process. That process produces an insight. That insight produces an epiphany. That epiphany produces the energy to get understanding about what all we're talking about, which then we can do and test by actually practicing it, which we can then work on as we improve upon it, and on and on and on. So you see, everything is a system. Everything.
Right.
Because if it weren't, it would just be chaos.
Which every now and then.
Which happens every now
Yeah.
and then. Yes.
Okay, so going through reading the book, you've got an awesome quote, which I think gets at, so taking all the stuff that you talked about now, which is ethereal, if I were to give it to somebody, their business would fail. But you follow that up immediately with all this concrete stuff. And I think the first thing that I got from the book, which was understanding that I was, at the beginning of my journey, I was a technician that was having an entrepreneurial seizure, and I wasn't an entrepreneur. So explain to these guys what you mean by that.
Well, I talk about the three roles of every business owner. And those are technician, manager, and entrepreneur. Those are the three personalities. But when you understand that most people go into business aren't really entrepreneurs, they don't have a dream, they don't have a vision, they don't have a purpose, they don't have a mission, they want to get a job, they want to be self-employed. So they want to get rid of the boss. So get rid of the boss and create my own job.
Really?
That's what everybody does. You know what I'm saying? And because you believe you know how to do the work, meaning you're a photographer, so I'm going to get rid of the boss and I'm going to become a photographer, open up my own place and take pictures, and you know how to take pictures, so obviously you're a photographer. You open your doors, but what you didn't realize is you're a photographer, a technician, suffering from an entrepreneurial seizure, but you have no clue that there are all these other functions of this photography business called management, called marketing, called sales, called money. The problem with most small businesses is the founder of the business is a technician suffering from an entrepreneurial seizure. And so most small businesses fail for that very reason. So we need to develop the skills of a manager, and we need to develop the skills of an entrepreneur. If my business is not here to do something for someone else that is significant for someone else, then it's a wrong-minded business.
And that's one thing that I think a lot of people miss is having a canary in the coal mine. And that was the one thing that finally, for me, broke me out of the matrix, my vernacular, obviously, was recognizing that you could plot what you were trying to accomplish on a map, whether the map is metaphorical or not is irrelevant, but you could plot it on a map and then you could ask the question, am I moving towards that or not? So for me with this company, so obviously our goal is to take back the food supply, re-engineer it, and actually make it healthy for you, but still completely enjoyable to eat. The canaries in the coal mine for me are my family, because I grew up in an obese family, and I can just see, like, if I'm eliminating their problem, I'm moving towards the goal, and if I'm not, then I'm not, and I've got to reassess. And the way that one plays out, the meaning and not understanding your meaning and really getting lost in the day-to-day running the business like a technician, is you end up with what, even in this relationship, becomes my biggest frustration with managers, that they don't have enough time to hire, right? Why don't you have enough time to hire? Well, I'm too busy to hire. That's like saying you're too busy to eat, or you're too hungry to eat, you know what I mean? It's like, if your hunger is so great, the very thing that will solve the problem is eating. And one of the biggest fights that Ron and I ever got into, my business partner Ron, was early days. I was so proud of myself, you have no idea. I was working retarded hours. My poor wife, I thought, was literally about to break ties with me because I was working around the clock. And my goal every day was to make sure that there were no customer support tickets. Just trying to get to the bottom of that list to make sure there was not a single customer waiting. And I brought him in and I was like, see man, I never leave until every one of those is checked off. And I'm like, it's like a checklist. And I just go, and he was like, that's stupid. And I was, what? Like,
Your partner said that?
yeah. At the time, he was my boss, right? And I'm like, well, how can that be stupid? Like, I'm taking care of the customer. What are you talking about? And he was like, that's dumb. You're not putting in a system. You got to put in a system. Otherwise, you're going to be doing this for the rest of your life. You're never going to get free of this. You'll never be able to move up. And I was so emotionally hurt because I thought I was doing something so cool. And here this guy that I really respected was like, that's stupid. That it was like this total disconnect, but then forced me to realize I'm working in my business, I'm not working on it.
Right.
I'm forever now handcuffed to these support tickets. The more successful the business becomes, it will be completely bottlenecked by my inability to get back to people. So, you know, you walk people through that, and in your book, the narrative that you tell all about pies, what was the first thing that you told, who is a real woman, I'm assuming, or a group of people that have suffered similar problems? How do you break them out of that?
Well, you break them out of that by changing their point of view. In other words, there has to be a shock to the system. And the shock to the system is already evident in their experience. So you understand they're already struggling. They're already, the frustrations are exacerbated by their inability to deal with them. You don't have enough money, you don't have enough time, you don't have enough customers. The bank won't loan you enough money, and on and on. We all know those things. So we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the greatest frustration of all. And the greatest frustration of all in every single one of your companies, ladies and gentlemen, is you. In short, you're the problem. So it's like, you know, people constantly ask me over the years about Steve Jobs. Now, Steve Jobs opened Apple very close to the same time we opened our company. And so everybody talks about Jobs because Jobs is a miracle worker. And they say, what did Steve Jobs know that everybody else didn't? And the truth is, Steve Jobs didn't know anything anybody else didn't. He just cared more. He was a dropout from college. He dropped out in his first year, Reed. The next thing he did, he went to India on a spiritual search. He dropped out of his spiritual search. He thought it was stupid. He came back and got a job as a technologist. He dropped out as a technologist because he wasn't really suited for it. And he went with his great idea to his garage, his father's garage, and started Apple. Didn't know anything about business whatsoever. But he had a dream. And he pursued that to a degree that aggravated everybody. He was the worst boss in the world. He pissed everybody off. But the extraordinary thing is the energy, the passion with which he pursued this impossible dream touched everybody. People would work 18-hour days. Touched everybody. That's the heart of Apple.
Now, is that something you can systematize?
You can systematize everything. The universe is a system. It's simply seeing it. So I'd like to say, until you can transcend it, you can't transform it. And so transcending myself is a critical piece to transforming myself.
But what does that look like in reality? When you say transcend yourself, what do you mean?
Well, in reality, it means I'm looking down from above.
Okay.
Meaning I'm not just muddled up in the middle of it, doing it. I'm watching myself as I do it. Every single one of us have the ability to do that. We can, in fact, see what's going on with a part of our mind that isn't completely consumed by where we are. And the first skill is concentration. And so as I watch you here, I know that concentration is actually absent in most of you. But you understand, please don't take that as a judgment. It's just, unfortunately, the reality of our lives. We're not here. And I'll give you a perfect example of that. I'm going to give you an instruction. Remember the balls of your feet. So put your feet on the ground. You see, like that. And then press your feet to the floor. Now you're suddenly different than you were just a moment ago. Do you feel that difference? Now you see, the minute I speak to you, you lose your feet. Don't you? You lose your feet. Now understand, you lose your feet because you're unaccustomed to concentration. Concentration is like Tai Chi. Concentration is like a martial artist. Concentration is being here. The second essential skill, as we're practicing concentration, is discrimination. And that's the ability to choose where I focus my attention. The third skill is organization. Organization is simply turning chaos into order. Every bit of disorder that you see is a distraction from concentration, discrimination, organization. And it's a reflection of the disorder in the state of our mind. The fourth essential skill is innovation. That means continuous improvement, continuous improvement. Innovation, quantification, orchestration. Innovation is finding a better way. Quantification is actually measuring the outcome to make certain that it is a better way, not just a different way. And orchestration, once we've found the better way, to turnkey it. So we have lifted our productivity and our performance, whether that be for an individual or for a division or for a company. And finally, the fifth essential skill is what we're doing right now, and it's communication. Because until communication occurs, all the rest of this was internal. Until communication occurs both ways, and the skill of communication is sacrosanct. Because it's the way that you touch the rest of the world, and the way the rest of the world touches you. So all of this that we're talking about is systems thinking.
You've talked a lot about people come in with assumptions that hold them back. One of the assumptions being that entrepreneurs are born and not made.
Yep.
Why do you think that belief is so universally held?
Well, it seems to be true, because here you've got Steve Jobs having done something. He had to be born that way. I mean, because all the other people who dropped out of Reed College are smoking dope someplace. So you know there's got to be something in him, and he must have been born that way. And I'm saying, well, yeah, he was born with a certain set of genes, but something happened over the course of birth too. And what I'm suggesting is that everybody can make that happen, starting right now.
What's step one?
Step one is absolutely coming face to face with the reality that I want that to happen. Because if I don't want that to happen, it ain't gonna happen. So there's got to be the desire. And suddenly you see where the rubber meets the road. I can share with you all the bullshit that I've heard over my years. I mean, it's remarkable how creative people are at avoiding the truth. So that's the deal. So then you say, I want to, then you challenge. Do you really? I mean, do you want to so much that you'll actually follow through with what I'm going to ask you to do? But they don't do it.
That's right.
You understand?
Oh, yes.
They don't do it. They could, but they don't. But I never tire of the process. Because in the process of demanding integrity, in the process, I'm demanding integrity of myself. So I'm working on myself while I'm working in myself to transcend myself, to discover a part of myself I've still yet to discover.
Right.
So it's both personal and it's impersonal.
And in that is a question that you say you ask yourself a lot that I'd love you to leave these guys with, which is the notion of what's missing from this picture.
Yeah, it's the great entrepreneurial question, but it's also the great question for every single one of you. It's called, what's missing in this picture? what's missing in this picture? Right now, as you're sitting there, forgetting the balls of your feet, you've already forgotten that. You see how that is, and then the smile comes on your face. So, holy shit, he caught me. You know, while you're doing that, you understand it's what's missing in this picture. And there is something always missing in this picture that is self-evident. My point is, as you do this work, you begin to remember yourself. And as you begin to remember yourself, you begin to create a logic for being. And as you begin to create this personal logic for being, you begin to relate to yourself in a way that the mind that says what's missing in this picture will immediately be present to what's missing. So in one sense, this is philosophy. In another sense, this is psychology. In another sense, this is entrepreneurship. In another sense, it is awareness, intelligence. And every single one of us have the ability to do that right now. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. You have the opportunity to begin it anew with what I call a blank piece of paper and beginner's mind. You have the opportunity right now.
All right, Michael, with that, thank you so much.
Thank you,
What a
Tom.
pleasure to have you on the
pleasure.
show. That was amazing. Guys, it's a weekly show. We are out there combing the world for people like Michael who can bring you amazing insights, a lifetime well-lived worth of insights that they can offer up to you to do what you will. As Michael said, you are the product of that thing you were born to create. So guys, go out and create. It's a weekly show. Come back. Be sure to subscribe. Michael, where can they find you online?
At michaelegerber.com. And I'm going to invite each of you to subscribe free to the most wonderful thing I've ever created. And I really feel this. They're called the Dreaming Room Monologues. And when you go to my homepage, michaelegerber.com, at the bottom of the homepage is a registration. So you just register for the Dreaming Room Monologues, and they will be automatically sent to you once a week. And each week it's on a new subject about come dream with me, come dream with me, come dream with me, and reinforcing the same thing that Tom just said. This is the first day of the rest of your life, and you are the product of what you believe. And so if you can open that channels to allow something in that you've never heard before, something astonishing is going to occur. I promise you that. So thank you, Tom.
Absolutely. Thank you. Guys, be sure to take him up on that offer. I know that it will be amazing. If it's anything like the amazing books that he puts out there, it will be time well spent. Also, again, subscribe to Inside Quest. If you haven't been to InsideQuest.com, be sure to check it out. We also do a question and answer series. Be sure you're checking that out. In fact, you can find Michael's question and answer series there as well. And you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at @TomBilyeu. Till then, we'll see you next week, guys. Take care. Mike, thank you so much.